Hello, and welcome back to Garden Arcana, episode 2. This is in response to the series created again by Candy Soul and Soil and Garden Goddess Tarot Thea. And I enjoyed the first episode, the making of the first episode, well enough that I thought, well, I'll give a second one a go. So here we are. Today we're looking at the Emperor, Hierophant, and the Lovers. The Herbcrafter's Tarot went with Hemlock for the Emperor, which is not a tree I know anything about. It doesn't grow in my area, and I haven't spent any time learning about it. Also, my animal identification skills are not amazing, so I'd have to look up this one too, if it's a walrus or whatever it is. But for the Emperor, I went with Red Osier Dogwood, and I'll put some pictures of that in. And the reason for that is because of its associations with strength and protection, and to a certain extent grounding. I think it's one of the things it's known for in this area is protecting the riparian environment against soil erosion. So you'll find it usually in riverbeds along with willow, and it's kept very busy trying to keep the soil from ending up in the river, which in a landscape like this one, outside of the city, it's all farmland and ranches. And so there's a lot of cultivated land and a lot of soil that ends up in the water, so it becomes even more important than along the riverbank to protect that landscape, and provide a habitat as well for any sort of little animals that live along the river. You can also make a tea of the dried bark. It's just a general tonic, although I haven't tried this because I've heard it's quite bitter. And a Cree teacher whose book I've read has used a tea of fresh growth in the spring as an energy tonic. And just for fun, I'll show you here. This is the book. The name of the herbalist, medicine man they call him here, is Russell Willier, and he agreed to have his stories written down. And so I haven't read this book all the way through. So far I've just used it as a reference book to learn about some of the plants in my area, because some, like Red Osier Dogwood, are not European, as far as I know. The other cards I have here, that could also be associated with the Emperor, I think, are not that one. This one, redwood. I haven't actually ever seen the redwoods. I would love to see the redwoods, but in my area we do have juniper, a couple different kinds, and it also will prevent erosion. It grows on sort of embankments, I guess, nearish the river, and you can eat it in small quantities. Although I haven't, it's not my favorite plant to work with, but it's a very common one around here. All right. Next up is the Hierophant. I really should look up what some of these plants are, although I expect they're not going to be found in Canada. The Herbcrafter's Tarot went with cacao, which I love. Some of their choices for their cards are really trying to, I think, decolonize what it means to be the Hierophant card, and so I really appreciate that. I love love chocolate. I recognize the version of cacao they're talking about is used quite differently in ceremonies in Mexico. But it's a beautiful card, and I love that association. This is another bird I had to look up in Murray's guidebook, and she explained a lot about the ancient seabirds and why she chose them, which I found very interesting because I have never heard of this particular kind of bird. But there is an ancient tree that I would associate with the Hierophant, and that is birch. Birch is associated with wisdom and spiritual guidance, and I consider it to be one of my plant teachers, my main plant teacher. It's a beautiful tree. We had a weeping birch in front of my grandma's house growing up, so I feel more familiar with birch than with some of these other plants. You can also, if you want to use it in herbalism, it's apparently good for kidneys and skin. You can make a tea from the young leaves, and that information, the sort of general purpose European herbalism traditions, or European-based North American traditions, I get from these books, both quite old now and battered. The Herb book and Mrs. Grieve's Modern Herbal. And this adorable little playing card of, is it Rocky Mountain? No, it's Northwest, Pacific Northwest. I assume it's from an American perspective, but we're sort of Pacific Northwest adjacent. Where I live, we're near to that area, so we do have water birch here, and it is beautiful. We do also have weeping birch, which is not native to this area, but it's not really invasive either, in that it doesn't do any damage, so I love it. It's a really gorgeous tree, and very gentle and very wise, and I think spending some time with a birch tree is a lovely idea. The Soulflower Plant Spirit Oracle also has a beautiful card for white pine. White pine is not common where I live. I think it's more common further east, out east in Ontario and Quebec. But there are other kinds of pine. There's lodgepole pine and all sorts of pine. Some of them European imports, like Scots pine. I didn't think grows natively to this area, but it's become sort of naturalized, I suppose. And they're all beautiful trees to me, and this is totally subjective, but they have a, I don't know if it's a younger energy or a more playful energy than birch trees, but they do also carry a lot of wisdom. They grow very quickly into at least some of the varieties, like lodgepole pines. And mugo pine, I believe, in the Rocky Mountains will start quickly growing in areas that have been damaged by forest fires. So it's a great tree for healing environments that have been damaged. It's not afraid to go in and be the first and do the hard things and sort of clear a path for future plants. And the next one is the Lovers. And oh, I forgot the butterfly one. There's a butterfly version of this Lovers card too that is adorable. The Lovers, Herbcrafter's Tarot chose Hawthorn, which is lovely. I love the hawthorn plant. It does have quite long, intimidating looking thorns, but I think it's actually very gentle. It's I think it is a caring plant too that you could develop a relationship with, but I do think you have to be intentional about it, so perhaps that's why they chose hawthorn. I don't think it's a plant you want to be careless with, not just because of the thorns, which will stab you if you're careless, but also because it's a heart medicine. It will affect your heart. If you have a weak heart or blood pressure issues, you can take it in a tea. Of course, that's just what I've read, so I'm not a medical professional or anything. And I wouldn't take it if you're on heart medication, because it can affect your heart rhythm, and so that could be dangerous. But generally speaking, I find it a very sweet sort of tree. Editing Nicole here. I realized watching this back that I had forgotten that my lover's card from the Tarot of Atara was on my Deck and Walk shelf, so I ended up with a chariot by mistake, but this is what it's supposed to look like. But the one I picked that just seemed to want to be associated with the lovers was wild strawberries, which have associations of love and sweetness and relationships. I don't know that they have any traditional associations with ideas about choice or intention in that way, but there's a lot I don't know, so it's not impossible. And as I said, they felt like they wanted to be associated with a lover's card, and I wasn't prepared to argue with them. If you've ever seen a wild strawberry, they don't look like much. They look like very tiny, rough and tumble, not terribly aesthetically pleasing strawberries. Some of them don't even look like strawberries. They just look like little red sort of blobs with seeds in them. So they may not look appealing, but if you ever have a chance to eat one and you haven't before, you will never be able to taste a store-bought strawberry or even a farmer's market strawberry the same again, because wild strawberries have packed so much flavor and such an intense experience into such a tiny little package, and they're really astonishing. Even farmers market strawberries in the summer can't compare even a little bit to wild strawberries. Medicinally, you can use the roots and the leaves in a tea, which apparently is good for the urinary tract, and berries have been used for fever and arthritis. If I can remember who I learned this from, there's a forager on Instagram, it might be Black Forager, who very recently, I believe, posted a story about, or a post, I'm not sure, I'll try and find it and link it, about fermenting the leaves of strawberries, raspberries, those sorts of plants for one day, and then drying them completely and using them for tea. And wow, was that ever a good idea? Because I've done that with raspberry leaves, and I realize they're not strawberry leaves, but the smell is amazing, which is not normally a smell you'd get off of raspberry leaves, but they really do smell much fruitier when you do it this way, and apparently taste fruitier as well. So when I get enough strawberry leaves to try that, I will definitely be trying that. Another plant that I have on my balcony that is in the Soulflower plant spirit oracle, if I ever remember the name, it'll be amazing, is Self-Heal, which could, I think, if you're talking about trying to develop healthy relationships and take personal responsibility for choices and healing, then Self-Heal is a lovely plant. I believe it's related to the basils and mints and plants like that. It certainly looks very, basil-like but flatter. I'll find a picture and put it in from my balcony. It's a very sweet plant, and very much like it says, it's been used as a general purpose herb for all manner of problems, and is just sort of a general health and wellness sort of plant. One thing I think I forgot to mention with birch, so I might try my hand at reordering this, or I might just leave it as is that the tea from young leaves is good for kidneys and skin, and in the Scottish tradition, its bark is used with elderflower as a spring tonic. And in addition to the sort of general purpose books I mentioned earlier for Scottish traditional uses of plants and relationships with plants, I've used this book, Scottish Herbs and Fairy Lore, which is fascinating, and I have read this one all the way through, and as you can see, have many notes and tabs. All right, I think that's all I had for today, and I will see you next time for more fun with plants and tarot.